You are now live.
Thank you, Julian. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay on the Planning Commission. We had some technical difficulties getting live with the video. We are now here, so we'll go ahead and expedite this, get to the point. Call to order the Planning Commission virtual public meeting for Thursday, November 5th, 2020. Ms. Hook, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Sale,
Here.
Mr. Waltman,
Here.
Mr. Klein,
Here.
Ms. Butler,
Here.
Mr. Imes.
Here.
Okay, looks like we have a quorum. We're full. All attendees here for the commission, with the exception of our two still vacant spots. And we will go ahead and proceed on to approval of the minutes for the last meeting. And I'll bring those up. Okay, most of you seen already the upper half with Ms. Butler's changes right there in red. For such standards will be reviewed by the Planning Commission for comment before adoption. And then we'll go down to the red with its continued. That's obvious that was in there. And I have no further changes that I would recommend for this. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about the minutes before we move to approve them? Okay, we'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as drafted with changes in red from Ms. Diane Butler.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second conversation on the floor. Anyone have any more comments with regard to it? No comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Minutes approved. We'll stop that share and go back to our agenda. All right, the approval of findings. Indeed, we've already approved those findings and they were signed, just not yet in the hands of Dr. Nash. We will get those forwarded by close of business this evening after the meeting, because I can't get into everything right now unless I get to find them and send them. All right, on to any new business. We'll just continue that on to miscellany unless anyone has any brand new business they want to bring up. Okay, moving on to public hearings. Would now like to reopen, well, the public hearing is still open from our small cell systems. Hearing is continued from October 15th, and it was continued from the meeting before that. And then there's resolution 4120, which is for fees and fines, which is also continued in part of it. So the small cell systems, we've had a draft change, a draft of comments sent by Mr. Waldman to everyone. Hopefully you've gotten that. And Mr. Waldman, would you like to introduce or talk to that subject at all? Or would you like me to just go ahead and bring up your comments and display those from your email?
If you would, that would help me. Thank you.
I can bring up your comments from the email. Would you like that, or would you like something different?
No, the comments from the email would probably be fine.
All right, let me make sure the screen is appropriate to send out. Nothing there weird. Well, yeah, you always got to check these days. Make sure, All right. Well, we'll start with your "I am not shirking work" comment there. And this, okay. Here we go. All right. This is from Mr. Waldman, sent a few days ago.
Okay. Look, when I went over the legislation just briefly, the first items in the legislation, I think there's a later iteration of this where it's a little easier to read, but that's the same thing. The point is that systems in the public right of way, it doesn't say anything new. It's not very long. It just makes it clear and simple. Systems on private property, same thing. It's just says there has to be subject to the regulations and authorizes. And it's interestingly, it's in that section that the department is authorized to promulgate the guidelines and regs. The use tables, they have to be included in legislation like this, and they're very straightforward, so no changes there. the standards for uses. And that's the only place where I think that we could clarify, simplify, and stay consistent with what we just did with the traffic studies legislation. And I would suggest, I think that I didn't make any changes to this, but that I would reword that section 2164-565. That small cell systems subject to standards, regulations, and guidelines is promulgated by the department, and that the guidelines shall include but are not limited to the following subject areas. Without getting into what each one of those areas should be, but just that they need to be addressed. At least these areas need to be addressed in the guidelines, the regs. And I just put down basically what was in each of those, the notice, that approvals and so forth need to be issued before the systems are installed, the requirements of the plans, the applications can be consolidated, the deadlines, and once author's approval is issued, that there's a deadline to getting them up. Something about wind loads need to be certified, compliance with federal standards. If there's any issues or communications with federal agencies, that also needs to be supplied to P&Z. If the system is not being used, it's abandoned, and if the violations are subject to enforcement, I get to, a schedule of fines that are actually part of this whole package. And then the terms and definitions are also nothing new and nothing to be changed and have to be included. So actually our work is fairly simple. I didn't do much but just sort of cut things out and, say what needs to be included.
So you're basically just saying, take what's there now and simplify it into this list, and then keep the
rest of it's
language
fine.
that's in the ordinance and move it to the guidelines to the regulations, but okay, I got it.
Yeah.
This is Joel from Office of Law. This is exactly the type of direction we want to move in it. And thank you, Bob, for your hard work, because this is it. This is exactly what I think our code and our regs should look like. And thank you for your hard work.
Well, for Joel, first of all, you thank you, but it's not hard work, and I'm here to make you happy. So, but seriously, it is consistent with what we talked about at length, and I think we can go from here. I actually typed up another iteration, which is just a little clearer. And I suppose I should volunteer to do the findings, just because I already have all these words on the computer.
You want me to do the first draft and send it to you?
Why don't I find that other document, get it to you, and that'll be a reminder to you to just format it out.
Okay, great.
All right, I'll do that. And that's it. I mean, the hard work, if there is hard work, was done by Alex, Mr. Pline, by reading through all of the fine print and, the comments of AT&T. But for the moment, in terms of the legislation, I think this is sufficient. Okay, so I would move that that we transmit this as we recommend approval of the legislation as amended as recommended here.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second? Are you actually making a motion, Bob? It sounds like it.
Just to get the discussion going, right?
Right, okay. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? So we can start discussion?
There's no second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. And so discussion, usually with parliamentary procedure, you discuss either before the second or after, but we're going to do it after. We like that. Okay.
Well, so the only comment that I would make about this is that, I think we should hand over kind of an updated markup of the actual legislation, so it's very much unambiguous as to what we're asking for.
Yeah,
So,
that can be done.
essentially taking the Word document, striking, and, doing that. So it's really clear when we pass this on to the city council that they see what we've done and don't
I
have to interpret it
actually
all.
did that, and that's what I sent out. What's today? Thursday? I think I sent it out Monday. I actually did that because I was supplied the legislation in a Word document, and I was able to make those changes. I think I did. I don't know. Whatever it is, I will get it. I will try to do that and get that to Sally, because I think
Yeah.
you're right. It should be very clear. Okay.
Yeah, we'll just include that with the findings and.
Yes. That's fine.
Yeah, what sold me, Bob, on when you wrote this a while back was shall include but are not limited to the following,
Right.
which means it's like, okay, we can clearly at a later point add something with not much hassle, and it can be added or changed to requirements outside of the code within the standards, which is
Right.
where stuff should
Yeah.
lie, and it obviously is what we're talking about here. So
Right. Good new issues. I mean, new things may arise, and you're right.
because all of a sudden, let's just say if they start doing something and we, people go up and wait a minute, we don't like what they're doing downtown, and we say, hold up, we want to go and change the standards real quickly, and then we're not overruled by the code already.
Right. Exactly. It's to give some flexibility to the department in there.
Now let's what if this, based on what we have here and the standards we have and are going to get tighter on, because we have a recommended set of guidelines here. So the zoning department, we're going to have to develop the guidelines, right? I see Sally shaking yes. So you develop the guidelines, and let's say something comes up to where they're doing something within our guidelines and we don't like the way it's panning out. How quickly can we change that? How's that going to look in a process? If we want to change those guidelines rapidly.
Joelle, do you want to speak to that? I'm not sure go ahead.
As discussed previously, I think we had this conversation within the planning commission to promulgate new regulations or to change old regulations. I think it'll be the same process, and that is just publishing and notice is all that's required to change the reg.
So if we don't like the way a box is going in downtown or the way they're putting something on top of a building and we want to change that standard, we're going to have to go through the lengthy process, and it's obviously going to be anything before that is grandfathered and anything after, not so much. But I'm sure these telecommunications companies would work with us, I would hope. I mean, once things are up, they tend not to change. But if they're in the process of, I think we would still likely be able to maneuver things. And things look pretty good, I'll be honest with you. But I just want to what if it for the worst case scenario. Anybody else?
I think we need to get some experience with that process. That's all. I just think, it may not be as bad as you're saying it is. It may be that, there's a notice, there's a hearing before us, there's a decision, and then that's that. And then the guidelines are changed.
So the
it may not
question
be
is,
as ponderous.
Does the city have a policy already or a process for updating guidelines documents?
Yes, the city of Annapolis does have a code section. I'm trying to actually find it now because I believe I forwarded it to everyone previously. I'll see if I can find my email and re-forward it or download a new copy of the regs from the city code.
Yeah, Sally, if you want to change standards inside of planning and zoning, I'm sure we've changed standards in the last 5 years or so, or 2 or 3 years on items. You have to put that through a whole hearing process, planning commission, city council vote, or is it as simple as, oh, this is a nice, easy item. We can just change this in-house in the department.
Well, we periodically review policy decisions and change a policy, usually with just a memo. But our code right now is so prescriptive that it's almost always involves a code change. So
whereas this goes away from doing that. We're starting to go away from prescriptive code, right?
in this, I think there's still, well, Joel sent it, but there's still like there's some time period that has to elapse. I think, isn't there some notification, Joel? I know you're looking for it, but we don't typically, I don't really know how it works because our standard go-to is to change the code is what we typically do. So,
Yeah, I think we're going to have to make sure, or somebody's going to have to make sure that there's a process in place that puts forward, that enumerates the steps the city has to take to change a regulation. You know,
right.
that, you know, how long it has to be noticed, or the notice has to be placed, where it's placed, what the public comment period is. You know, all of that.
Mhm.
You know, the Fed's not saying we should copy the Fed's requirements, but you know, they have processes like that for, you know, rulemaking and stuff.
Mhm.
Obviously,
And
this
that's
is
kind
not
of what I'm
at that
imagining.
stage, but
I think we
yeah.
need to make it more, um, you know, call more attention to that practice and say how we do it, and then say how we're going to do it, and then do it that way. So,
I have the code section. If I can share my screen, I'll be happy to walk you through the. Is everyone able to see my screen? Ben, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay, so basically what we're looking at here, we have the ability to post online any of the regulations that we would like to create, provided that the code especially authorizes the creation of the legislation. And it must be posted within 4 weeks of the adoption, so that everyone can understand what the regulation is and what the requirements of the law are.
But it says 2 weeks. The proposed regulation has to be posted on the city website for at least 2 weeks for public comment. Would we want to make that like 30 days?
Well, again, that would require a separate code change. So if you have comments on this section of the code, 2.04090, we could make separate changes to this code section, but they intend that it'll apply to all future regulations that we create. Though
But,
I would argue.
Well, was this already passed? The city council already approved this?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
this has been the law since 2006.
Oh my gosh, so we haven't been using this, and it's been interesting.
The Office of Law has a particular focus on putting this provision into play under Mike Lyles as the city attorney.
I should say, I don't know if maybe other departments have used this, maybe Public Works has, but I know in planning and zoning, we rely on the code and going through the code. So it will be a new process for us.
I should say, typically the city council kind of drives that bus.
Why are y'all saying that we don't follow this? I mean, we post in advance stuff for the public to see if we're changing regulations, and we also post an agenda supposedly 30 days prior. There have been times where it hasn't been 30 days, but that's
No.
Right. I think what Sally's saying is that we typically don't do a lot of planning and zoning regulations this way. Our regulations are enshrined in code, and this effort is to try to remove some of that minutia out of the code into separate regulations that are.
okay. Help me out here legally with terminology. When you say regulation, that's not code. And when you say
Correct.
standards, is a standard a regulation, or
Yes.
explain to me code, regulation, and standard? I know what the city code is, but I thought the code was a regulation because it's the code.
Okay, so the city code is the ordinance, and the ordinance must be passed in a very specific way. We have what's called a resolution. A resolution only lasts for a year. So for example, the city's fees are in a resolution. Next, we have a regulation, and a regulation can have the force of law once it's delegated authority. So it's going from the legislative branch, the executive branch, to allow the executive branch to do what the legislative branch was doing, which is rulemaking and creating the regulations. And I think there was another term that you used. I'm not sure if I've addressed
Standards.
it. Say that again?
Standards.
Standards. So standards are very interesting because, for example, I see standards, and we have cases involving Department of Public Works and Maryland State Highway Administration may propose standards and details. And I know that they have a very specific meaning in those sorts of places. Do they have to force a law is actually a great question. I would argue that unless something is an ordinance, a resolution, or a regulation, or it operates as one of those three things, that it wouldn't have the force of law. And specifically, as you look at the code section that's on my screen, it says that the regulation refers to the adoption of either a regulation or rule. So this is also about rulemaking and the ability of the city's executive branch to create various rules.
So standards you could deviate from without breaking the law, one would think, is what I'm hearing. And also guidelines, because our thing is called guidelines. We're referencing guidelines and standards as keeping these things in check. If we have standards and guidelines, and they say they looked at the standard or the guideline and decided to do something else, can they without problem?
Well, I also serve as counsel for historic preservation, and historic preservation's guidelines to me feel stronger than guidelines, because if you don't follow their guidelines, that's not a good thing. So I think that in that case, it feels closer to being a regulation at that point. But I think that the real thing, it wouldn't really matter what the name is we assign to it. It matters about the law that created the powers to create whatever this document is. So for example, if Sally creates standards, but she does not, her standards were not authorized by an ordinance, for example, that allows her to create a regulation, then you could argue that her standards are not regs, and then they're something less than mandatory. As opposed to if the ordinance authorized the creation of the rule, regulation, I'll include standard or guideline, then it seems like it comes closer to being under this sort of code provision. So I don't think it's really literally what happened, how was the law created, that will tell you whether it's a guideline and a standard, and if that is something less than a regulation, for example.
Mr. Joel, should we remove the words standards and guidelines from this? And simply, is it best to simply authorize the department to promulgate rules and regulations? Because standards is unclear. They're sort of a goal.
Yeah, standards and guidelines, I think, creates a lack of clarity. So for example, again, if I was the lawyer having to argue, let's say a statute gave us the right to create these regulations, and we call them standards or guidelines, I'll argue that, again, it's not the name, it's the fact that we were authorized by the statute and imbued with the power to create the law that we created. However, if I think for simplicity purposes, if we call it a regulation, we know regulations are authorized.
You're cutting out.
I'm sorry, that's all I meant to say. If you call it a regulation, we know that a regulation is authorized.
Well, then we may have to revisit the adequate public facilities auto transportation, 1919, because I think we use standards throughout. Maybe, I mean, I have to take a look at it again, but I know I thought it was standards. We were creating, saying that when the standards get created, they'll come back to the.
Well, here's why what I would suggest with respect to that is, let's not us revisit that. Let's let the Office of Law advise the council that if they need to amend that language, they can do it at the Rules Committee. I just don't think that we don't need to bring it back. We've sort of said what we need to say from that. And I would suggest that with this small cell stuff, that we become more precise in our language, and that we recommend to the council that they authorize the department to promulgate rules and regulations. Forget what guidelines are and forget what standards are. They're imprecise terms. standards, implies a goal. I don't know, unless I would think that goal could be even as part of the preamble or as a regulation within, the rule book itself. And guidelines, I'm not so sure what guidelines are. They seem more process oriented than anything else. But what Mr. Brathwaite is saying is that no matter, even if you authorize regulations, standards, and guidelines, if the council authorizes the department to promulgate those things, they're promulgated with the force of law. So, Mr. Brathwaite, what do you suggest? Include the extra language or not include the extra language? Uh-oh, we lost our lawyer.
We might have done the mute, unmute button.
Oh.
Okay, here I am. I'm back.
Yeah.
So I think that if we just keep it at regulations, at regulations, we understand what regulations mean and we understand what we mean to say. I take also your comment that the rules committee, with the Office of Law can interface with the rules committee and do the replacement of if standard is mentioned in that in that ordinance or whatever or that piece of legislation. We can certainly fix that by calling it a regulation and look for making global changes like that throughout the code.
Okay, I'm gonna amend my motion to whatever language is proposed here, that we delete the word standards and guidelines, and we just recommend to the council that they authorize the department to promulgate rules and regulations. Does that clear things up, Mr. Brathwaite?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does that, have I made myself clear? Because I don't ever, sometimes I don't.
Can you restate the motion again? Because I'm confused.
Okay. I move that we recommend to the city council that they adopt the small cell legislation as we recommend, as attached. And what I'm saying here is that this is not part of the formal motion. What I'm saying is that what I will do when I rewrite it is I will delete the word standards and guidelines. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. And then when we have a chance to see it for the findings, we can see if it's clear. Okay? So my motion is simple. We move to recommend approval of the legislation as we propose, as amended. And then there'll be an attachment.
So could we say something like to move to recommend approval of the legislation to city council as amended to make
as recommended herein.
Herein, I was going to say to make changes to section 2164-565 standard of uses, but do you not want to put that? You want to just stop?
No. I can't remember what the ordinance number is. It's the ordinance, whatever the heck it is.
029. 02920.
Okay, then we recommend approval of 02920 as amended herein.
Okay, and then
very simple. It's going to be very simple.
Those two resolutions, do they follow with that too? Are they attached or no?
I think at this point, let's leave it just with this part of the legislation. We haven't discussed the other part, so I don't have any position on those things. We haven't discussed.
They're just the fees and the fines. So if you want to just, you could just recommend approval for them separately or whatever you want to do with them.
Right. I haven't even looked at them, so I don't even know what's in them. Sorry to admit. Whatever the commission feels. If you want to do it all as a package, that's fine. Or if you want to do it separately, that's okay too. But my motion is really directed towards the ordinance 02920. Now, Ben, there's something better, but it'll take me a minute to find it and email it to you, okay? You have to give me a second.
Okay. Okay, can we take a quick 2-minute break for a bathroom break, everyone, while he's looking for that? Take a quick 3-minute recess. How about that? Or you keep chatting as you'd like. I'm going to take a 3-minute recess.
Joelle, are you there?
Yes, Sally.
Can I ask you a question? Did you see Cynthia's email about Norwood?
Brief indulgence. The answer is no. Norwood, Norwood Road.
Yeah. If you could just look at that and let me know what you think. We can talk about it tomorrow if you want.
Yeah, Mike and I looked at this, and I think we have we will have an opinion for you.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I'm going to respond to it tonight.
Wonderful.
Oh, okay, hold on. What do I do with this? No, this isn't it. Edit it. What do I do with it? What do I do with it? Fucking do with it. Open, will you? Damn it. How do I open this freaking thing? Goddamn computers.
All right, success, Bob. Then you can share it if you'd like. I'll stop my share.
Bob, you're on mute. Still on mute.
I'll try to unmute him. No.
I think he has to unmute himself. I have a feeling we're just missing a long stream of invectives. Oh, there he is.
Yes, you are. And you
Long
have
stream of what?
Invectives.
I'm close. I'm trying this for the third time now.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, I just want to bring to the point, from my understanding of legislation, if let's say if I go to put up a radio antenna downtown for this, and I have to put in a request a permit, which is going to have my design on it, and it's going to go to the department for review, and it's going to be put against their standards. Now, if it's something like that may fit our standards, but is it going to be in a contested type area, let's say in the middle of downtown, I would think that there would be some talk amongst the department, the mayor, everyone else, and to say, hey, I don't know, should we approve this permit or not? I just hope that the power would still be within the permit review process. At any point, the city could say, yes, we have these standards and guidelines, but we're still going to say no to this item or yes. And I think that it would. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Nash.
Right, since the ordinance specifically refers to the regulations, then the regulations are basically, my understanding, an extension of the code and have the same force as the code.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. But it's interesting, and wait a second, let me just quick look at something here. Okay. In this ordinance, this legislation, it says two different things in two different places. Not really terribly different, but slightly different. If you recall, when I summarized, it said that early on, the Department of Planning and Zoning is hereby authorized to promulgate regulations and guidelines to effectuate the requirements of this section, and that they have the force and effect of law. Yeah, that's up in one of those sections that I said really does not need to be changed, okay? But later on, and it's going to take me a second to get there because I'm working on a document in OneDrive, whatever the hell that is. It says in the section that really does need the work that we're looking at, the simplification. It calls it's tight headlined, standards for uses subject to standards. And so all throughout the table of uses, remember, things are permitted subject to standards. So throughout the code, they use the word standards as well as regulations and guidelines. So now I'm backtracking myself and saying that maybe we should use all three words. The proposed legislation says small cell systems are subject to the following standards and must be in accordance with the Annapolis Small Cell System guidelines. So, when I send it to you for findings, I'm going to use all three words just to make sure we got our bases covered, okay? And then maybe we'll hit a home run. If we can get a triple, we can hit a home run. I'm sorry for this whole footnote and this whole detour.
No, let's get it right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe just to play devil's advocate here on using all three. I mean, it just seems like then there's going to be some ambiguity. I'd rather settle on something that is the most stringent, like regulations.
I get that. I want it to be inclusive. I want it to cover it. The chapter 2164 is titled Standards for Uses which are subject to standards. Follow me? And then when you talk specifically about small cell systems are subject to the following standards and must be in accordance with the Annapolis Small System guidelines. And I just think that it's become common practice in the Annapolis City Code that these words are not used with, with absolute precision. And so
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. But one way to deal with it is to say, look, they're authorized to promulgate standards, regulations, and guidelines. And so there'll be no doubt about whatever language is used. Okay? I just to get this like done and off the table. And to be inclusive, I mean, so that there's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think you are pointing to a larger problem in that
right.
Our code uses a lot of words in the same way, different words in the same way, and the same word in different ways. And, that should be looked at it. And we should probably look up every time the code says standard and make sure it actually is meaning the same thing.
Yeah, because really,
I'll let Joelle do that.
Well, what the code means when it uses the word standards, it really means regulations.
But does it mean guidelines? And Bob, do you remember in law school the word surplusage? When something is defined several different ways, it just confuses people. So you really want to eliminate those situations. So I sort of agree. If we can eliminate just a couple of those terms and limit it.
Yeah, to me, standards and regulations are similar in that they're mandatory. Guidelines are
right. Process oriented.
Right.
Yeah, they're process oriented. Okay.
And I didn't mean for those guidelines to be, I meant for them to be, have the force of law. So, maybe that.
Just change the title. Change the title from guidelines to regulations.
Okay.
Okay.
And then
Don't
post
use
it on the
word
website
standards.
so that people could comment on it and welcome comments, and then close the comment period and move forward.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So okay. My motion is the same. I haven't changed it. What I will do then is try to type this out so that it fits what we've just discussed. Okay. And then when we have it, everybody has the same document in front of them, then we can decide. Okay. Okay. And we can do it at the time that we address the findings is what I suggest.
That makes sense to me. And,
Okay.
and I just want to warm and fuzzy from planning and zoning that while these guidelines and standards are being further developed by the Department of Planning and Zoning, that we're going to be able to be aware and have input to that in the near future. And is there a timeline when you're going to have these standards and guidelines that you have to have them done? 6 months, a year?
No,
Any idea? I would say within short of a year, because these things are going up.
they're done. I mean, Mr. Pline and it went through them, and we're going to
We've
do
made
that.
a lot of progress.
Are we going to discuss it? Yeah.
I drafted preliminary draft, which you've seen. We've sent it to some industry reps. They had comments. They sent them back. Our law office had some comments, and then Alex had some comments on those. So I now need to take that all together and then bring it back to you, reshape it, and then bring it back to you.
Okay.
And my biggest part of that is the cabinets on the poles in the historic district, because I did a lot of driving around. Coming back from St. Mary's to the Homewood Germantown area, and you're looking through the neighborhood, Murray Hill and whatnot. You see these telephone poles, and you go, they're probably going to put one right up there on that telephone pole because it's all through Murray Hill. And to me, it's not so much the part on the top of the telephone pole as it is the cabinet and the power meter boxes down on the bottom part of the telephone pole.
Mm-hmm.
And because these telephone poles right now are just carrying electric cable wires up high, and they don't have boxes usually on most of them. So when we start adding all those cabinets everywhere, I would want those to be, if they could, under the sidewalk and rather than on the pole, because these things are pretty obtrusive.
Yeah, like the Verizon boxes that you smack your face in every time you walk by one.
Or you ride on a bike, because you're elevated on a bike even more so if you're standing up on a bike. So that's my biggest thing is, are we going to get that kind of coverage in the code and are we still able to accommodate that?
Yes.
standards. So, but that's not going to be what we're doing here. That's going to be in the guidelines and standards.
Yes.
It'll still be amended
And
later.
the regulations.
Which are now called regulations.
Now called regulations.
Regulations, standards, guidelines. You guys are the lawyers, clearly. Thank you.
Well, we could give it if it makes you more comfortable, we could give it an acronym, RSGs.
RSGs. I like it. I like it.
But at any rate, I think we can, I mean, that's the motion, and then I will do my work, and at the next meeting, we can actually look at the specific language when you have it in front of you. Is that acceptable? Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Your motion still carries then. Your motion is out there and it was seconded, but you're not changing the motion at all.
No.
You're still going to come back with a redefined. So,
Yes.
okay. Tammy, you clear on what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. There's a motion. There was a second. There was discussion. Any more discussion on the motion? None. All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Waldman, and you will be preparing the revised draft to us for the next meeting, or you can provide that in the intermediate time, and we can go ahead and.
As soon as I get it done, you'll get it.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Looks like
And
it's
I'm going to
starting
send a
to
copy
go.
to Dr. Nash and a copy to Joelle Brathwaite. Okay? Okay,
Fantastic.
great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to the sharing the agenda. Okay, so the small cell systems, we have concluded that. Is there anything else that we have not covered that we need to cover on small cell systems, Dr. Nash or Mr. Waldman?
Well, what do we do with fees and fines? Those are resolutions. Do we simply deal with them by saying we move that we recommend approval? Or do we need to look at them?
Cooperate with Office of Law. My opinion is, do you want to recommend fees and fines? And if you do, you approve them as written, or if you believe that the fine should be increased or decreased, you make that recommendation also.
The small cell fees and fines, I mean, for us as a commission to set that, I think that's better for something like the guidelines to be finalized by the Department of Planning and Zoning. And I don't want to modify and change what's already there, being a planning commission. That's my view. Anyone else?
I haven't looked at them, so I don't know how well they stack up against fees and fines in other jurisdictions. Are they reasonable? I don't know. Sally, do you have any opinion?
So the FCC limits the amount of fees you can charge. However, Anne Arundel County has charged pretty high fees. So I matched ours to Anne Arundel County, since we have the same constraints that they would use to justify higher fees. So our fees are starting for a new installation at $4,000, and then depending on whether it's replacing part or how much it's replacing, it's $2,100, $2,000, or $1,475, which is just for a modification. So our fees are pretty high, but I feel like we're going to be spending a lot of staff time reviewing these, so I feel it's justified.
I would think, being the city of Annapolis is a premium on everything, we should add 10%, right? Come on, it's the city of Annapolis. Honestly, it's not. I don't think it's for me to decide. I don't know. I agree with Dr. Nash. Well, actually, I don't agree. I think what she's saying is logical, but I would think the best people to do this for the fees and fines is the Department of Planning and Zoning, and I would leave that to the director. That's my view. Anyone else?
Second that motion, Ben.
Oh, okay. I guess there's a motion on the floor and then to fees and fines to be passed for definition and application by the Department of Planning and Zoning as the director and staff see fit. Does that make sense? And is there a second on that motion, Ms. Butler?
Yes, I second.
Okay, she'll second that motion. And anyone correct and stop us if we're wrong here. Conversation on the topic, on the motion? Mr. Waldman, Mr. Iams?
No, I think what Dr. Nash said, it's like you said, is very logical. It's based on our surrounding jurisdiction, and it's comparable to the surrounding jurisdiction. And as she said, staff time is going to be considerable on this. And so frankly, if they want to put these things in, they're going to have to pay for them. So I don't feel like we're in a position to get into the weeds on the small details on this. So I'm in favor of the motion.
All right. And I'll add one more comment with the motion. Actually, I won't. I'll leave it. Anyone else? Conversation. All right. All those in favor of the motion to defer system fees and fines to the Department of Planning and Zoning director and staff as the director sees fit to apply that, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. All right, that takes care of the fees and fines for small cell systems. And yes, there you go, Dr. Nash, you got your work cut out for you. We have thrown a lot in your court with your small staff. And honestly, make it so inflation is accommodated easily for you. I don't know with our fees and fines. That would be nice if all of our fees and fines had an inflationary item attached to them legally so they naturally increased. Does that happen or does it not already happen?
That is a super good idea because I've been saying that for the fee in lieu for rec and parks, how it's so low and it hasn't changed in over 10 years. And they do tell us every year, look at your fees, make sure they're still appropriate. But it'd be nice if there was something where it was tied to inflation or something.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
federal inflation rate, even though, that may not seem like correct to all of us at times, but at least doing that would at least put a set increase. And then you could look at every few years and say, okay, we probably need to change it even more so. That's a recommendation for maybe we could make that recommendation at some point to the city council. Anyone? We could do that now.
We could put it in with your findings for the fees and fines.
Yeah, we could do that with these fees and fines, add that as another motion. You know what? I'll make a motion that we add on to the small cell systems fees and fines that the federal inflation rate for whatever fees and fines are imposed, increase that rate over year upon year, be tied to the federal inflation rate for increase automatically. Is there a second?
Second.
Conversation on the topic.
Do it.
A lot of sense.
Okay, we'll be the first. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Well, that was easy. That was great. Fantastic. The motion passes. We will tie the fees and fines that the department chooses to the federal inflation rate on an automatic basis to be increased in the future.
And
All right.
should we do that? I have a quick question. Should we do that for all fees and fines in our code? I mean, Sally, that seems like,
I think we should.
but do we have to have the law department draft a piece of a resolution to do that?
So, Joel Braithwaite, Office of Law. The resolutions, the idea behind the resolutions is that they expire from only a year. So a resolution is law, but only law for the year in which it's passed for the most part. Because the resolution usually tells you this is what the council feels about something. And it's less than an ordinance. An ordinance, for example, requires 3 readers as opposed to a resolution, which only requires first reader and can be passed as law on second reader. So with that in mind, I think every year we create a fee schedule for the city of Annapolis. And so we were going to be looking at all our fees anyway. I think indexing it to inflation is a smart idea, but I'm not sure how it fits in with the way the city currently does business, which is annually, not allegedly, but they evaluate fees and set fees on a schedule. With that in mind, I'm of two minds of it. I like the idea of indexing to inflation. It would require some research to be done correctly. And then second, because we set resolutions and fees annually, it could just be that every year we increase the fee, so that the recommendation from the Director of Planning and Zoning is that the fee be increased, rationally related to our expenses and the idea that things cost us more money as we move forward.
Very least, we have this fee and fine for small cell systems due to resolution would already be done by the Planning and Zoning Department because we came to that resolution though. So this
No,
one,
we don't. We're simply recommending to the council that they approve a resolution. And then in addition, we're making a recommendation that they add an inflation index. We're just recommending approval of this resolution to the council. We don't have the power to make law.
correct.
We're just recommending approval.
All right. So we've recommended for these fees and fines, and also hopefully we have not made the recommendation that they do it for all the other fees and fines. We just did it for this one.
Right, but I'm saying because of what Sally just said, maybe we should try to get somebody to introduce a resolution to tie the inflation index, to our fees and fines, because I don't think every year they do get reviewed carefully and go up, because I was just looking at a fine that hasn't been changed in over 15 years and it's way too low. So, we can say that we're supposed to do it, but we
I
haven't.
think it would be an ordinance.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
What do you
So
think?
do we want to make that part of our minutes and recommend that we make an ordinance? They make an ordinance for that. That would be another motion here.
And
All right. I'll make a motion then. I'll make a motion that we add on, we recommend to the city council that they look into adding an automatic inflationary increase to all fees and fines on an annual basis. Is there a second?
I second.
Conversation on the item.
Well, do you want to say tied to the
Tied
inflation
to
rate?
inflation rate, right? What?
Federal inflationary index.
Well,
Manual
I would suggest that it be by way of, if we pass the resolution, that somebody communicate that by way of a letter to the city council and ask that it be considered.
Set of minutes.
Yeah, nobody reads the minutes.
Well, I know, but couldn't we ask like Joelle or Sally to ask Gavin to sponsor this bill?
Well,
ordinance?
okay.
We're just recommending that
Yeah.
they go do it. That's all. It's our resolution. Elements that we recommend they do it.
And it may get referred to the finance department, and then, it's going to go through a long thing. And I want to remind you, with inflation at the rate of what it is, what is it, 2%, 1%? It's not going to add, it may be more trouble than it's worth. Let's say your permit fee is $75. What's it going to add? 7.5 cents?
Well, that's better than the current problem of you just have a fixed one over the last 10, 15 years and it never increases with inflation.
That's true, but that's why the department heads should be reviewing, the important fees and fines. And whereas, you got to change the website, you got to change this, you got to change that. I mean, it's a good idea. I think it should be considered. That things just get indexed, especially for a $2,000 permit fee. That's a lot of change. 1% of that is $20. Anyway, I would suggest it just as a matter of suggestion that if the motion passes, that somebody be deputized to write a letter to the mayor and all members of the city council.
One would think there's got to be a good reason why they didn't do this in the past. Is it because it would be such a hassle every year to update all the fees and fines?
That's what I wonder.
Yeah,
There's
and
gotta
it
be a
all
reason.
needs to be reprinted and everything else.
Well, maybe there's an easy way to do it. And if there's not, we can ask the county how they're doing it, ask somebody else, see, other jurisdictions. If there's an easy way to do it, we can just adopt what people are doing.
Okay.
I'm happy to go ahead and recommend it.
How about before we make the recommendation for everything else, we can just have Sally, who works in the building with everyone else, ask people there that have fees and fines. If anybody knows at the next department head meeting why this hasn't been done, you could simply just do that.
I can do that.
I mean, does that seems to be simpler? Just a department head meeting. Is there any reason why we haven't indexed or tied our fees and fines to the federal inflation rate every year on an automatic basis? Simple question.
Okay.
And you might get a better answer that way rather than we start drafting everything else and going crazy. All right. There was a motion and then there was a second. It sounds like the motion, we're going to kill it on the floor. I'm going to withdraw the motion. So I withdraw my motion. That was seconded. Thank you very much for your support, but I withdraw that motion. But the one for the small cell system fees and fines, we're still keeping that one.
Yes.
Recommendation of tying it for small cell fees and system. Right. So we recommend that one still be tied. That one still carries. Is that clear, Tammy?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I have nothing left for public hearings, and the public hearing should now be closed unless anyone has any reason not to do so. Public hearing is closed on the small cell systems. Now we go down to the miscellany category. Miscellany, we were talking in the past, and there has been talk about adding on ability for the public to make comment in these meetings via the standard city process that's been vetted through multiple city council meetings by this point. I would like to also do that. I recommend that we do that for our planning commission meeting. Does anyone have any conversation with that or would like to or not, including Julian? You can chime in as well if you want to help us out for any answers that we have or questions.
Yeah, sure. I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Julian. And the system that the city council uses, I believe that standard and what I've seen and how it goes can easily just be carried over to us, and we could start doing that as early as our second December meeting if we have one, or the January meeting. Are you okay? Do you agree with that, Julian? That it could be done?
I do. Yeah, I think that the only thing you really would need is a point person, so that when someone does sign up, there is that point of communication. I think that's the only thing that you guys kind of need to designate.
That could be the chairman or the vice chairman. Start with the chairman, and the vice chairman is if we have too many people to communicate with. But I think the chairman would be the way to go with that. And we start out and see how many people we get for communication. Or we could also make it per people's neighborhoods, like on the commission, how we have people from different neighborhoods. But I'd rather just keep it as at the chairman level, but with transparency to every other commissioner that we're having that person.
Yeah, and I would recommend having one point person on it too. That way, there's you gather those names, and then you can communicate that to me as far as who's actually going to be attending, as far as the public goes. Okay.
And so you mean the one person gathers the names?
Yeah. So and I can send you what we send them as well. Send the public when they sign up. So basically, what happens is currently with City Council, there's the same place that you go to do written testimony. That same document. There's a box that you check, and then that says that you want to give live testimony. We receive that email as soon as that comes in. From there, we send them a list of instructions, as well as the login for.
I think that would go through our Department of Planning through Jackie at first, and then it would carry over to me as the chairman of who would, want to talk and why, and we allow them, right?
Yeah.
So Jackie, being our representative in planning and zoning, would get those requests and then forward them or copy myself at the same point. Does that make sense, Sally? We're going to work through this process. We just basically got to agree here that we want to apply it.
Yeah, we're struggling a little bit with that, just because Jackie doesn't come to every meeting, and there's some things where if it's my agenda item, I'm going to pretty much be shepherding it through the process. But
we're just talking stuff to do.
Yeah, so I don't know if it'll be Jackie. Maybe it could be Drea. I don't know. We're going to have to figure out the best staff I'm not sure, like, Julian, what kind of, is it just collecting names and then sending them to you?
So what happens is right now what happens with City Council is when someone goes and checks that box, actually all public testimony right now for city council gets sent to Regina, Takia, myself, and Mark, as well as I think Mitchell might also receive them at this point as well. So we see every single person that actually signs up to give written or live testimony for city council. So when we see that, we take note of if they actually checked that box or not. And if they did, we wait until the day of, and then we close. I believe we close the actual option to sign up for public testimony for that night at 3:00. So there's time to gather the information and make sure that there's no changes or anything to the agenda. And then we will then go through and send them the login information for that meeting, as well as the instructions. So it could be the same thing. If it's the same document, and if we're CC'd on it, if we're set up as people who are received notification on it, that we can technically do it the same way.
We'd want to do it the same way, but I can tell you right now, we don't want to wait till 3:00 the day of. I'd rather put a close of business day prior on
Sure.
that, a lid on that for sure. At a
Yeah.
minimum.
So like close the day, the previous day, you mean?
Yeah. Close of business previous day that's the last you can request to come to a meeting, unless specifically, allowed for, but really we wouldn't. Close of business previous day. That gives us time to hash things out because we got a lot of things going on.
That makes a lot of sense. The one thing I'll say is that people will still, one of the hurdles we found is that people will still sign up, or not sign up, but they'll send their testimony after that point. So then it's just a matter of creating the verbiage saying that.
We still take written testimony up till the middle of the day, roughly the middle of the day, lunchtime-ish, before our meetings anyway.
Right.
So we take written testimony up pretty late. But yeah, if you want to actually be a participant and get the link sent to you and everything else, that's got to be close of business for us the day prior.
That sounds great on my end.
I'd like to try it, and I'd like to work with you and Dr. Nash to implement it for a meeting no earlier than late December. What do you guys think?
Okay.
Yeah. I think it might be good to talk to Ina as well, because she's the one who sets up the documents and make sure that whoever is notified when they come in.
Right. Kevin's working on doing it for Port Wardens, so we'll just kind of see how he did it and do the same thing.
December 3rd is the first meeting in December, which is 1, 2, 3. That's 4 weeks from now. I think we can do this actually for the first meeting in December. Anyone have an issue with that, even if we do have that meeting? Then the next meeting will be December 17th in December.
Do you have a meeting? You have a meeting in November?
Yep.
19th?
That's correct, but I wouldn't want to do it for then. How about December 3rd? We shoot for that. That's our next beginning of the month meeting. That's in a month. I think we can do that.
I think it's a reasonable time frame on my end.
I have one concern. I feel like if, let's say, the Port Wardens has one rule for when, when you have to sign up for live testimony, and we have something different, and the Board of Appeals has something different, it'll confuse people. Should we set up a standard by which live testimony will be accepted? The sign up for it will be.
I'll be honest with you. I can't logically fit in and feel good about doing it no later than 3:00 the day of the meeting. I don't like getting stuff late like that. That to me,
the written testimony sounds like we are going to take until midday.
We do written testimony, but somebody actually wanting to come in and talk on video and everything else.
But that is less preparation. We just give them 2 minutes to talk.
Yeah, how is that any different than somebody walking up to the dais at the lectern up in city council chambers?
In a way, it helps us because they can explain their testimony. So even if we review their testimony by skinning it, we know they're going to show up and explain it. It's to me, it's useful to have them live. You know what I mean? Instead of reading 2 pages.
If somebody wants to come on live, they're gonna have to give us their email, their address. We verify that they actually are from Annapolis and at that address. I mean, I don't want to just have anybody coming up and saying, "Oh yeah, I live here." I'd want to have it verified before I put them on a Zoom call. That's my first reaction. Maybe in another 5 minutes, I think otherwise. I mean, we are public.
Yeah, but do
I mean, to
Do you do
restrict,
that when people walk up to the lectern? Do you do that now?
we don't.
I mean,
we don't. They give us
So
our
what's the
address, and I
difference?
look up the address online to make sure it's not some business or something. And I look real quick and be like, all right, this is a home, this is a residence, and this is their name. We take it down. You're right. I mean, in comparison, there is no checking of the tax records or anything.
Yeah, I guess I just don't. I don't really understand. I don't understand why we're making this any harder than it is for somebody just to walk up to the lectern at an in-person meeting.
I mean, there are
should
security
we
issues,
stri-
Alex, still because they are being put out to the public. You know, so that's our that's been our hurdle all along, is ensuring that no one comes in and does anything that's lascivious. You know.
No, I get that.
Let's put it this way: if somebody,
But I think we can do that without making it, having to prepare a bunch of stuff in advance.
Well, and I think, Julian, you said you can give the chairman the opportunity to mute somebody. So if somebody comes in, and let's just say it's a crazy person that's not even from our city and starts talking, Ben can mute them, and we can talk, behind the scenes about why.
We can also kick them out of the meeting if
right.
Well. The one thing I'll say also, that then you mentioned the name and all that. That is actually one of the things that we've found to be the biggest hurdle, is that people need to log on with the name that they signed up with as well. And the reality is, because personally, like if they don't, my instinct is to not let them in, because we don't know who they really are.
they have to obviously give you an email, right, that they're coming from, or is it just a name?
So when it's whatever they log in with. So we don't see any email or anything unless they call in. Then I see their phone number. That's the other part too, is what we recommend that they don't call in, because there's no name associated with that phone number. So the meeting starts and then someone's calling in because they want to give public testimony. We have no idea who that person is, and we're not going to interrupt you guys to find out, to make sure that the person is who they might be. So there's not an element. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
We want to replicate what we do in a normal business environment as close as possible, which is let people come in and talk if they want. But there's the added problem of, if you're going to send me a list of, say, hey, here's another 5 or 6 people at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon have signed up for the meeting, and you gotta see if you have, how you're going to fit that. You approve. I guess it really is limitless, because if we had a regular meeting, it's almost limitless of how many people can talk. So anybody who would want to could, like a normal meeting, apply for us. It's just, if I have to go back and then at 3 o'clock and start sending these people emails and say, hey, this is how you're gonna do it. You're gonna go into Zoom and give them directions and all that. I don't want to be spending from 3 o'clock up to meeting time sending emails and having people call back. Well, wait, can I use it with Google Chrome versus Microsoft Edge? And I don't want to have to be doing all that. I would think that has to be hashed out with the email coming from either planning and zoning, Jackie, or somebody else the day, in the morning, from a list that was compiled by the day prior. That's my personal feeling. I don't have the bandwidth to start at 3 o'clock, hash it out to 7. I mean, from 3 to 7, I'm really getting it ready for the meeting and getting off of work, doing things. It just needs to be sooner for me, for that reason.
And Ben, we've had the same conversations with our city council as well, because Takia and Regina, they are pretty slammed up until the moment of city council beginning that night. So I don't think you're wrong at all, personally.
Of course, it's what the commission wants. You want to make it the same as when we submit written testimony.
But I don't think it should all fall on your shoulders, Ben. Is there a way to offload it to
Jackie,
somebody else?
If we get written comments, they come in through online and also get emailed directly to planning and zoning, and Jackie would handle that and forward it to us.
Right.
But I don't want to be piling stuff on Jackie up to 3 o'clock last minute. People say, oh, I feel like I want to talk. I could understand until 11 o'clock the day of, like we do with our written written comments. But what do you guys think?
I think as long as it's not you or one of us that has to go back and forth with the potential person that has testimony about how to sign on, how to do it, and it's somebody else can help us with that, then I think allowing somebody to testify that signs up until, you know, midday, the day of the hearing should be fine. But I mean, I really don't think it should be you or any of us having to deal with the kind of the technical issues of getting people, you know, to understand how Zoom works and how it's good. You know, just doesn't seem like we should be doing that.
Well, and Diane, if I may, you do bring up another interesting element of this, is that this is just communicating people with people to how to join a meeting. This is not, there is not a bandwidth to be tech support for the entire general public.
Right.
Well, also, let's keep in mind, we don't typically have half the city knocking on our door for every planning commission meeting. I mean, let's not make more of a problem out of this than there really is. I mean, we have what, maybe one, maybe two people per meeting, if that, typically.
And it's often people who are like involved that already know the city procedure, whether it's Alderman Arnett or Alderman Gay or people that are sponsoring the ordinances that we're reviewing.
All right, so if we
I mean, I'm speaking specifically members of the general public. I just don't want to be a solution in search of a problem, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If we mirrored the city council in their process, we would take people up to the meeting time. Is that correct, Julian? When does the city make the cutoff?
We cut off at 3.
What?
We cut off at 3 for if people want to do public testimony.
And who sends
live testimony, I should say.
And who sends the link to the people?
We do.
Oh, here we go.
If we cut off at 3, would Jackie be able to do that? I would say we probably should cut off at 11 or noon. Come on. But if we cut off at 3, they would be over to planning and zoning to send that link out, I would think. Dr. Nash?
Yeah, we can work with that. Whatever you guys decide, we'll manage. As soon as I think we might be running the Zoom meetings ourselves too, so that'll be interesting.
I mean, why don't we just see how it goes, and if it's a problem, then we'll adjust.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
And if somebody Zoom bombs our meeting, it's not us, it's them. So it's not us doing anything wrong. We're trying to be open and transparent with public input.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the point, Ben. The more open and transparent we are, or at least attempt to be, the better. And then if we get burned and we have to readjust, we readjust. But I think our first approach should be to be as, you know, transparent as possible.
Okay, well, I will make a motion then that we allow public participation into our Zoom meetings verbally and to as much as we can mirror the city standard of participation submissions by 3 o'clock to the planning and zoning department with the checked form, and we allow them into the meeting during the public comment for the item they would like to comment on. Is there a second?
Second that.
I second.
Any conversation on the topic? I will add, hey, we start this December with our first meeting in December, which is 2 meetings from now. So any more conversation? All those in favor for allowing public participation into our Zoom meetings via as close as we can get to the standard of the city by 3 p.m. closure time on day of meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I can't see the rest of the gang. I assume that was unanimous
Yes.
from Bob. Okay, motion passes. Almost feel like, we could have done that sooner, but I guess not, because the city just got it aligned. We tried to back in August. We wanted to do it. But we were told, let's wait till the city gets it ironed out with the city council first, and then we'll just trickle down from there. Okay, Julie, is there any other commissions that are already taking public comment?
Ben, Kevin Scott is telling me staff member sends the invites to the public, not the chair. Okay. Oh, and noon day of. Can we live with noon?
I can live with noon.
But I
That's
think
why-
that's what we're doing for port wardens and Board of Appeals.
That's
Okay.
fair.
I like the idea of being consistent because I don't want people in Eastport screaming at me, but it was noon for Board of Appeals. How can you make, I just want to, if we can be consistent, that would help.
That makes sense, but they're going to scream at you anyway, Diane.
You got that right.
That's right, because they care, and I like that. I like the fact that they care. That means their community is going to do well. Okay, any other miscellaneous items?
I have one. I have down on my calendar 1 p.m. meeting tomorrow, planning commission work session for HACA's consultants that were going to help us with the Choice Neighborhood Grant.
I'm so glad you said that, Diane. Yes, is that on everyone's calendar?
Yes.
That is, and we had a Zoom invite been put out for that. I can try to show that. Let me look it up.
Or
It's actually a Google Meets. Yeah.
Google. Yeah.
Google, okay.
Yeah, I changed my my acceptance. I think from 10 maybe to yes
I got that. Thank
earlier
you.
today. Yep.
Yes, there's the HACA 1 p.m. tomorrow, which is Friday. We agreed to that a while ago. I will be there and not be square. And also we'll throw out, because I was going to this anyway, on November 9th, there's the all-day Maryland Planning Conference, virtual. So that's Monday. If you want to dial into certain stuff on their agenda for the Maryland, usually that's in a nice city in the state, but they hold that, but it's virtual this year. So that will be on Monday, all day. And you should probably have an email or 2 or 3 or 5 in your inbox about that. So, but you can always go to MPCA if you want to see what the actual conference agenda is, in case you already deleted their emails.
Hey, they're having some strong towns presentations, which I highly recommended last year when I went to the conference. So I was glad to see that they're doing it.
Strong towns. Okay, and yet, so tomorrow at 1 p.m., there's a HACA work session. You should see that somewhere in your calendar invites. Make that if you can. Any further definition of who's going to be there and doing what? Dr. Nash? Diane, anyone?
The HACA's consultants are going to be talking about some of the programs that HACA can apply to for grant money for redevelopment of Harbor House and Eastport Terrace. And hopefully there's some interesting federal money that's available. And so hopefully HACA can get a hold of some of that money for redevelopment, revitalization of the whole area.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. That dock in Eastport for water access, that's on that very shallow part of water right by the housing. That's HACA-owned property, I believe. And we have a pump station for the city right there with some gravel next to it or on it, via easement, I guess it is. That's HACA-owned property, correct? And maybe they could use some of this money or look for money to help develop that dock to make water access in Eastport better for people.
Yeah, we're looking at that. It's very shallow, but we've applied for grant money to improve Truxton Park trails, which are a lot of them are eroding away, and to start exploring the trails in Hawkins Cove. We do need to work. The property lines there are really weird. There is city and HACA property, and it's hard to tell where's where. So we need a survey, and then we need an easement with HACA. But the pier there isn't in bad shape. It's just very shallow, and the water gets kind of stagnant in there. So, probably needs dredging, but I think that's a really exciting area to look at and expand some of our water access.
Walked out there, and I know some other commissioners have walked out there on that dock, and it's a fantastic opportunity. And maybe we can bring it up in the meeting tomorrow. They at least think about it. Hopefully they already are, like you say.
I think so this choice grant is a really difficult grant to get. It's $30 million. And you have to show that the neighborhood that, the surrounding neighborhood is, kind of think of the word. I want to say blighted, but that's not the word. It's going to be.
It's like distressed or something like that.
Right. And so where they just got this in Baltimore was around Hopkins, around the hospital area where there's been a lot of, it's just pretty depressed area. So this project, I think it was called Parsons, basically public housing and the whole area was revitalized with this grant. And so the question is, can we really get this grant based on how the surrounding neighborhoods in Eastport are so affluent? Like what's the strategy there? We're not going to be able to say that it's a distressed, area that should get this big pot of money. But apparently what Melissa said, and Melissa Maddox Evans in the last meeting where she talked to us about this, she said that the people who got the grant for the Parsons project are the same grant writers that are working with the city now. So there is a chance we can get it. They know what they're doing. So I'll be really excited to hear what the plan is and whether it covers things like Hawkins Cove, water access, and things like that.
Yeah, you know what? I get what you're saying, but for me, I look at it on a more micro scale of the Hackett development itself in that water area. It needs to be improved, and it could be improved. So I think it's not as far of a stretch as you think, but I'm not going to go down that talk here. We can talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited to hear about it because I keep hearing other jurisdictions say, no, don't even apply. It's so hard to get. But I say, why not? And if these folks know what they're doing, there's a good chance we'll get it. Nothing to lose.
30 million or not, or is it like a small portion?
30 million?
Is it 30 million or nothing?
No,
or
it's all or nothing. It's 30 million. I think you get not even a portion of it. There's just
rebuild the whole Hackett development, All right.
Oh no, it'll be a lot more than 30 million to rebuild Hackett right there. I mean, Eastport Terrace, Harbor House, and that surrounding area.
Okay, tomorrow 1 o'clock we'll talk about that. Anything else? That's all I have.
Nope, the comp plan's going along well. We had a really good meeting yesterday with West Annapolis, and Eric's put a lot of new information online if you want to check that out. And we're starting up the Maritime Task Force, still working on that. I think the first meeting for that will be November 20th. And I'm a bit delinquent on my recreation APF work group, but I'm waiting for a map because we figured out a way to include equity in our planning is to have kind of the standard base map that shows, what is it called? It's kind of like a opportunity map of the city, like where the most opportunities are and where kind of the least opportunities are. And we can overlay that as sort of a proxy for neighborhoods that need more facilities, neighborhoods that don't need as many facilities. So we're trying to smooth that idea out a bit, but that's kind of how we're proceeding with our APF redo.
We all need more athletic facilities and enjoyment. Always is better.
And I have a question on the Maritime Task Force. Have the members been chosen for that?
Boy, you're beating me to it. And I don't like that question because that assumes we were going to provide members for it. I wouldn't think for the first meeting we'd need to.
Well, I think Bob has agreed to be an ex officio member.
It was asked when we talked initially about that, but I would think.
So I've asked Eileen Fogarty to work on that, and she's been talking to the mayor a lot about who would be on it, because there's certain, we have to have residents, we have to have property owners, we have to have tenants. So and we want to get a mix of all the different maritime districts. So I don't think I know she's talked to a few of those people to see if they would be interested. And so I'll ask her what the status of that is, and when is there going to be like an announcement, or I'm not sure about that of who's on it. And because I don't know
What does the
who's-
legislation say? I haven't seen the legislation that authorizes it yet.
The legislation says the mayor will appoint, like 15 people to this task force.
Does it specifically say that anywhere that we have to participate or will participate?
You don't have to.
No, I'm
But-
just asking. What is if the legislation? It doesn't require us to
No.
know how many.
Oh,
It
you
doesn't.
planning commission is not specifically named in as a member of the task force.
Okay.
But what I've kind of talked Eileen into doing is to have this be kind of part of the comprehensive plan, because I think we need to approach it in that same way, like big picture, instead of it started all because this one property owner was having some problems, but I don't want to be so myopic and just think like, how can we help this one property owner? I want to think like, what are the ways that the Maritime District really contributes to the city economically, but also in terms of placemaking, and how can we continue to value that and protect that in the next 10, 20 years. So I just think it's like a much bigger picture, like comp plan kind of discussion. So she likes that, and that's kind of where she's headed with her thinking on it.
Okay, so not required by legislation to participate or attend it, but we probably think it's wise to put somebody there as a liaison to.
I
attend.
would.
Planning and zoning is obviously going to attend with yourself or somebody else. As far as the planning commission, I would say any one of us can attend at any time they want, obviously.
Sure.
And as far as putting one belly button for that, Bob Waldman was referenced earlier on. If you'd like to take that, that's great. If not, anyone else?
I think the word is impressed into service.
That's a great old English term, impressment, my friend. I was impressed by you a while ago, so can I return the favor?
Isn't that part of the Constitution, though? Part of the Bill of Rights?
Yeah, the Constitution's very vague about that, Bob.
Yeah, it is, I guess.
Whatever you
I don't know
all
if that's a
prefer.
standard. I think that's more of a guideline kind of thing.
I think so. Okay. Are we done?
Okay, we haven't assigned anybody specifically. We can talk about that in the future as things tend to go along.
I've agreed to do it, and I guess I'm ex officio, so I'm not a voter, but I've agreed to be in on it.
Yes, as I'm ex officio on the Forest Drive task force, and I can make it.
Good luck.
I'm
Yeah,
so.
it's not done yet. It was supposed to have been done in January.
I know, and it's gone on so long. It is extremely taxing. I can't even make all the meetings anymore. But I'm still a member. They're doing good work, I guess, and things are moving along, guys. So, yes, the public shall be heard. All right, Bob, you got the belly button on that. Any other items? Anyone? All right, I just want to say, all you guys, thanks so much for what you do for the city. You're really putting in a lot of time, and we're doing 2 meetings a month. It's quite harsh to do that versus our previous schedule. And to be sure, Sally, and I don't have Jackie here now, but our next meeting in November, let me just tell everyone, just leave you here with a warm and fuzzy, will be November 19th, which is a Thursday. Remember, Diane, we're all Thursdays now.
Yep.
No more Wednesdays.
Yep.
The 19th, and then you have December 3rd, depending on what we need to do. And then after that would be 17th of December, which is debatable if we'll even need those. So 19th in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks again, the 3rd. It's every 2 weeks, drumbeat. All right?
Well, I would like to echo that, Ben, and thank you as well. I know it's a lot of meetings, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, you're all
Sorry.
great. Intelligence.
Sorry.
Make Annapolis great always, I guess. I don't know. What do you? All right, that's all I have. We can now close out and make a motion for adjournment. Anyone?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?